Okay, everyone, we're going to get started. I'm so grateful that so many are joining us this morning for this exclusive Zoom event with Kim Scouller. I really feel honored, Kim, to have you and to host this event with you. I know that you generally do large events and they're being broadcast over news media that are lots, thousands of people listening. And here we have you on this smaller group. I'm just so grateful that you agreed to come.
Well, thank you for having me, Mark. It's wonderful to be here with all of you on a Saturday.
I also want to recognize my friend and colleague, Sandy Miller, who's joined us out of Louisville, Kentucky. She's been a financial educator for many years as well. And welcome, Sandy. Appreciate having you here. Now, there you are, Sandy. Now, Kim, you might not recall all the details, but I don't know if you remember, I first met you in June of 2014. You were speaking at an event in Las Vegas. I came up afterwards. I was so impressed with your background, what you were accomplishing. And I said, hey, if there's any way, I'll organize an event in Arizona and fly you on down if you'll come speak. And you agreed. And so
yes,
we had a wonderful women. It was focused on, I think it was, I can't, it was something about blue skies or no ceiling. I can't remember the name of the event.
right. No glass ceiling, only blue skies.
Okay, I knew it was something like, I just couldn't remember.
You
But
got such a great memory, but it was wonderful. I flew into Arizona. You and your beautiful family picked me up at the airport, and we did the meeting the next day, and it was just filled with so many people who just really wanted some information. Women in particular. It was a great meeting, and I'll never forget it. It was a wonderful event.
well, you probably remember the wonderful gift basket my daughter put together because she went, she was so thoughtful. Christine was so thoughtful, put a wonderful gift basket together. I remember that part because I remember saying, I want to go speak somewhere if I could get a gift basket like that.
It was incredibly thoughtful of her to do that. And, when you all picked me up at the airport and I got into the van, your daughter with her baby was telling me about how she's holding women's events in homes because, her audience, her group are other moms and who with children, babies even, and so they can't get out. They don't have the flexibility to get out. And I thought that was just brilliant. There is no, right place to hold a women's event when you're talking about women. And holding it in the homes of moms with kids is, I just loved it.
It was a great event. And that little baby is now my wonderful 9-year-old grandson. And because I have 6 children, I actually have 15 grandchildren. It helps if you go wide, you tend to get a lot of grandchildren.
That's great.
Now, over the years, everyone, I've seen Kim at various events, and in fact, recently it's become more frequent. And so I actually count you, Kim, as a friend and just love the relationship we're building as well.
I do too. And I'm so grateful to Sandy Miller, who has for years been a very dear friend and business partner of mine, for reconnecting us. Because it's just wonderful talking to you about these things again and how supportive you've been about what we're trying to accomplish.
Well, that reminds me too. So a month and a half or so ago, you had a wonderful event with Tom Matthews and your co-author, Sharon Lecter. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But you had a wonderful event for women. There's women everywhere in Georgia in your office. I show up, there's a handful of men, and I think, man, I should have worn a dress or something. But we'll talk about how important it is for men to understand these issues. We'll talk about that a little bit later as well. All right, So 4 weeks ago, I hosted a wonderful event with Tom Matthews. It was a Zoom event like this, where we talked about that best-selling book, How Money Works, Stop Being a Sucker. It was a great event. He did a fabulous job, of course. And what's also fun with him is he's generally in large audiences and being broadcast on professional TV and that kind of stuff. And it was fun to have him on a little Zoom. And now I'm excited to talk to you about the sequel, How Money Works for Women, Take Control or Lose It. But first, Kim, I think it'd be wonderful for everyone to understand your background a little bit better. I mean, you rose from teacher, I think it was 4th grade teacher, is that right?
That's right.
And then I understand you worked your way through law school by working, I think, at a Hallmark.
Well, that was actually when I was a school teacher. So, when I graduated from college, I wanted to be a school teacher. I just loved the idea of educating people. So I got a job working as a fourth grade school teacher and loved it. But the teachers, like nurses and other career paths that many women choose, are undervalued and underappreciated and undercompensated. And so I had to work 2 extra jobs. One of them was tutoring kids after school. And the other one was I worked at a Hallmark store a couple of nights a week and every weekend. So I worked all the time just to make ends meet. And at the time, I was living in government subsidized housing. And I looked around me and at the other teachers who were my friends, and that was going to be my life for the rest of my career. That was going to be kind of what the compensation was going to look like. Everyone was working extra jobs. And it's not like, I could get promoted to fifth grade school teacher and, get a big raise or anything like that. I had taken the LSAT when I was in college and just applied to law school and ended up going to University of Louisville Law School and, becoming a lawyer. And I hadn't in my mind connected this idea of lawyers also being educators. You as a lawyer know that that's a big part of what we do, is educating people, either in a crisis or in helping them to do some planning. We're providing a lot of education. And so I found it very fulfilling as a lawyer, because that education purpose that I had was fulfilled with being an attorney. And I served as in-house counsel for Transamerica for many years. I was a securities lawyer and an insurance lawyer for them. I did a lot of mergers and acquisitions for them and ended up being the lead attorney on the team that created World Financial Group. It started off as an asset acquisition, and that asset acquisition back in 2001 has become the World Financial Group that we know today. I ended up serving as the president of the broker-dealer, which is the predecessor broker-dealer to Transamerica Financial Advisors. I did that for a few years and loved it, but that role really required somebody who could do a lot of traveling and who could devote a lot of attention to it. And I loved it when I was doing it because I had the opportunity to meet so many field leaders, because I traveled to office, and I was just so incredibly impressed by what everyone in our organization was doing. And I loved the people I worked with in the home office. Transamerica has some of the smartest people working for them, and it was an amazing opportunity. But I had an 8-year-old son at home who was missing his mom, and I was really missing him. And so I needed to make some changes in my career in order to have more control over my time. So I left the corporate side, started my own law firm and my own financial business, and had this wonderful opportunity to become a business owner and take care of my son, be a mom in the way I wanted to be a mom, and be able to work with such great people like Tom Matthews and Sandy Miller and Bill Mitchell and all of these wonderful field leaders that we have the opportunity to work with. So it was not a planned career path, but the only thing I had planned was becoming a school teacher. And now here I am, as a business owner, doing the things that I love and being the mom that I want to be, and having friends and business colleagues that are just, so inspiring to me. I'm living the dream.
Well, and I don't know if everybody can appreciate what it really meant to be the president of a broker dealer, especially one as prominent as Transamerica has become, to be in that position as a woman when you were president. I don't think people appreciate. There weren't many women presidents.
No, there were less than 1% of the broker-dealer presidents were female. And so I didn't really understand what that meant until I started going to trade association meetings. And, I sit on committees with the president of Merrill Lynch and the president of Raymond James and Ameriprise and all of these other large broker dealers. And I was the only woman in the room. And it really didn't hit me until those moments when I was the only female voice in the room. And not only that, but I was the only voice for middle income families, because all of those other large broker dealers cater to the most affluent clients. Those for them are the people they want. And we certainly help our affluent clients, but our main goal is to help middle income families. And that was absent it's absent in the financial services industry at the very top.
And Kim, it's absent in a lot of areas. For example, in the estate planning and trust and wills and things that we do as well. In fact, I'll tell you about almost 10 years ago or so, I was also focused more on the affluent and was getting my licenses back. I'd been a financial advisor back in the 90s, and I was getting those licenses back. And I had a paradigm shift because my daughter Christine called me one day and wanted me to train her in this industry to be a financial educator and a financial professional. And I at first turned her down. I didn't want to train people. But when she called me about 2 weeks later and kind of pressured me a little bit, and I said, okay, when I hung up the phone, Kim, I had a paradigm shift, and I recognized what now has become a passion of mine, and that's reaching out to the middle class. Now we'll get to women in a moment, which is now a passion of mine. But in the middle class area, this book, How Money Works, Stop Being a Sucker, the predecessor to the book you and I are going to talk about today. I understand you had a hand in that as well. I mean, your name's not on it, but you had a hand in that as well, right?
Well, it was truly the vision and hard work of Tom Matthews and Andy Horner and a whole team of folks. I helped do some editing work. I was the person who did a lot of work on the disclosures and the resources that appear in the very back of the book. And I also was a liaison with the Home Office, because this was something very different for WFG. And so we had to talk to them about what we were trying to accomplish, kind of what our goals were, keep them in the loop on the book and the process, and how we were making sure that what we were doing was very much in line with the regulatory requirements, but also very in line with WFG's message.
And our message as financial educators, to not just go in a home focusing on the higher income, but instead educating the masses, educating middle income, eradicating financial illiteracy, and that vision that you've had. I can tell you, Kim, in all these years, I've had a lot of resources to help me with people and teach them and those things. I've never had one as effective as this How Money Works. It's a bestseller, over 750,000 copies, been on the news over 300 times. And that helps when I say to the client to say, hey, this isn't just some Mickey Mouse book. This is one that's recognized, a best-selling book, and they read it. They look at these cartoons, and it's a fabulous thing.
Right.
So talk to us then a little bit about the transition to come up with this wonderful How Money Works for Women, and with Sharon Lechter. I don't know if everybody knows who Sharon Lechter is. Tell us about that.
So Sharon Lechter, she, first of all, is amazing. She co-wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad with Robert Kiyosaki, and she wrote 14 other books in the Rich Dad series. She was brought on board by the Napoleon Hill Foundation to write several books, including Think and Grow Rich for Women, Outwitting the Devil, 3 Feet from Gold. She is a nationally recognized speaker, entrepreneur. She's a New York Times best-selling author, She advised 2 US presidents on financial literacy matters. She got the laws changed in her home state of Arizona to add personal finance to the high school curriculum. She is an OG of financial literacy. And we were so fortunate. She spoke at a Wealth Wave convention about 3 years ago and was so taken by the original book, How Money Works Stopping a Sucker. And her comment to Tom Matthews was that she's been out there talking a lot about what the problem is, but she hasn't really written about what the solutions are on the financial literacy side. And she fully endorsed his book and what he was trying to accomplish because she saw it as a great way to communicate solutions to people. So when we started talking about doing the women's book, Sharon Lechter was, just kind of a natural thought to us about being the co-author. So we reached out to her and she loved the idea. So she and I went back and forth on a few things. We, really talked about how we wanted to accomplish this. And now, about a year and a half after she and I first talked about doing this book together, we now have the book. It's being printed as we speak. I was at the printer on Monday with Tom and Andy, watching those huge machines roll the prints of the book off. It was quite amazing.
And it's a historic event. I hope you took pictures because this movement of, I remember back in the 60s and 70s, Kim, I became a realtor, a licensed realtor at 1989 or 90. I can't remember exactly which year, something like that. And the 60s and 70s, it was predominantly men in the real estate industry. And it was starting to make a shift. And then in the 80s, it was making a big shift. So I came in when that shift was happening and they were talking about it. We could see it happening. And here we are in the financial services industry, predominantly men. In fact, right now it's predominantly old, bald, white guys like me, right? And it's shifting, and our company and our team is at the forefront of shifting it to open it up to everybody to enter this industry if they want, to reach more homes, to bring these concepts down. And I'm excited not only about what we're going to talk about women, but let's go back to How Money Works, Stop Being a Sucker. The book is divided up by characters talking back and forth, cartoon characters. And it's divided into two sections. The first is really introducing concepts. Talk to us a little bit about why cartoon characters, to divide up these concepts of financial concepts.
So, you can go to Barnes and Noble and look at the section on personal finance, and most of the books look very similar, and most of the books read like textbooks. And it's kind of off-putting. We wanted to create something radically different. Tom's vision is let's create something that more people are going to want to read and that they're going to follow through and read. And it's going to have practical advice for them on things that they can put into practice for their personal finances, no matter where they are in their career and their life. And so he and Andy really had this vision of putting something together that was more accessible. Now, Tom talks about the back in World War II, when they had to train a lot of pilots for the Air Force. And, to give a pilot a training manual is probably not the best way to train a lot of pilots en masse. And so what the government did at the time was actually create comic books to help train en masse pilots for World War II, for the Air Force. And so they took that same idea, creating something accessible, easy to read, inviting to read, and fun to read, about a topic that most people are, standoffish about. And, for Tom is not a stranger to paradigm shifting. And that was a brand new way to look at educating people about personal finance.
And each of the characters is a different um, um, walk of life, right? You got the young person, the middle-aged person, the older person, and those types of things, which I love.
Right.
So with how many works for women, we get different. So I guess some of the characters are the same, but you add characters to how many works for women.
So there are 4 women in the original book, and we wanted to create a book that addressed the stages that women go through throughout their lives. So we added 5 more characters to the original 4 characters. So we've got a young woman in college, and a woman in her 20s, a woman in her 30s, a woman in her 40s, a woman in her 50s, a woman in her 60s, a woman in her 70s, and a woman in her 80s. And so we wanted to cover the full range of situations that women go through throughout their lives.
In fact, one of the fun concepts in the book is that there's not a one size fit all solution. There's concepts that apply to everyone, but there's not just one solution. And so it's just wonderful how it weaves through these different stages of life into teaching basic concepts that apply to everybody. One of the favorite concepts is the rule of 72. And I just think most people don't understand how powerful that rule is, and what it does for, especially for our young people.
Exactly.
Yes. Back when we were first meeting there, when we had the no glass ceiling, blue skies concept going on, one of the challenges that you were fighting hard to solve was that women weren't being paid attention to in the financial services industry. Has there been some changes? Is it getting better?
It is getting better, and you'll see that a lot of financial firms are now turning their attention to women and the women's market. What they're doing, though, is kind of treating women like they're all the same. And we are very different times in our lives. There are some things that women have in common, but there are a lot of things that are different. And I think it's a mistake that a lot of large financial firms do, is that they try and treat women as one segment. They try and treat us as if we're in a niche market, and then tie it up with a pink bow. And that's just not the case for women.
Yeah, in fact, when I was attending that event in Georgia with all the women there, and I was one of the few men, both you and Sharon Lechter pointed out that it's not a competition with the men. A lot of the issues overlap as well. It's actually more of a partnership is how you presented it. And I love that concept as well.
Right. It's definitely not an us versus them kind of idea. It's this thought that women need to become more educated, where we need to understand money principles. 80% of men die married, 80% of women die single. We are the beneficiaries of the great wealth transfer. We're going to be, the owners of $35 trillion of the financial assets in the United States. And if we haven't taken the time and effort to educate ourselves, then we aren't going to make the best decisions. We may make some lucky decisions, but I'd rather help women make fully informed decisions.
And it's very interesting too that men, of course, also, most of them don't understand how money works either, of course, and especially middle Americans, they just don't, and that's true. But there are some unique issues with women. I was on the plane flying to Las Vegas to that financial convention I just attended. I sat next to a woman in her now late 40s, but 5 years ago, her husband passed away unexpectedly, and she had 3 children, an 18-year-old at the time, and a 2-year-old, and I think a 7-year-old, something like that. And he died. And she said, first of all, she had 3 years of just kind of dark, right? Meaning the emotions of it.
Right.
But she told me, she said, I didn't know what to do financially because he handled stuff. And it was very, very frustrating for her to be now in a position to have him gone. And I showed her this book, and man, her eyes lit up. She was so excited. And this is a woman's issue for sure. But now, Kim, my experience is over the years, more than half the households that I go to, the woman's actually the one in the background taking care of the finances. That's true. So it applies to both. So I think this partnership concept you're talking about, don't you agree? It's just so important that they work together so that if something happens with one, the other one's empowered to continue on.
Absolutely. The responsibility is with the couple, and it's also the responsibility of the financial professional. Sometimes it's easier to just, work with one member of a couple, but we've got to make sure that both members in a couple have their answers questioned, and we know what both of their goals are, and that we've explained things and helped both of them, because either one of them could end up being alone. And we want to make sure that person is fully informed.
And even though there's a lot of overlapping issues, some issues are unique, overwhelmingly unique to women. I was inviting a man to this event, How Money Works for Women event, this little Zoom event. And he says, so women have different needs. And he was laughing like it was funny. And I says, well, actually they do. For example, my mom needed special care for the last number of years of her life. Do you think it was one of her sons that did that? No, it was Millie. And Millie had kids at home, taking care of also her life and taking care of my mom all at the same time. That's kind of a unique, more often woman issue, don't you think?
We end up being the caregiver for our children, for our elderly parents. And we end up in care because we live longer. 2/3 of Alzheimer's patients are women. 2/3 of nursing home residents are women. And so we have to make sure that we are financially prepared for that outcome. It's not me. I'm not going to end up with Alzheimer's. I'm not going to end up in the nursing home. If it's not, even if it's not you, it's going to be your sister, your mom, your aunt, your niece. Somebody you care about is going to be in that situation. And so we have to be better financially prepared.
Also, I think men, as we help women become more financially prepared, and as we help men become more financially prepared, they do need to understand how each other thinks. That's why I go to the women events. In fact, you've got that wonderful event scheduled for the 24th of this month in Jacksonville, Florida. I'm planning on being. I asked if I had to wear a dress again. They said I don't. I can just come. And I'm bringing my wife, and I'm bringing my daughter Christine, and we're excited to sit there because I think if more men start understanding these issues as they apply to women, then that'll help speed up this process to empower women to take control of their finances. So what, from that perspective, Kim, what's your insight on what we as men can do?
There are a lot of things that men can do. Being supportive, attending the events, learning more about the situations women find themselves in, talking to more women, making sure that your partners, your personal partners, your business partners feel empowered, your children feel empowered, creating those opportunities for women in your life to feel that empowerment, to learn more, and to be, an active part of either your financial decision-making process. So, we wouldn't be here if it weren't for the insight and vision of Tom Matthews. He is a father of daughters. He is a grandfather of granddaughters. His vision of empowering women is personal and professional because he knows women are the beneficiaries of the great wealth transfer. And he wants to be part of that from a professional standpoint. From a personal standpoint, he wants to make sure his daughters and granddaughters have a better financial future because they are engaged and empowered and participating.
Talk to us a little bit as well about the characters in the book and walk us through some of the characters and some of the unique issues for each character.
So I just love the characters, and I really think they're going to resonate with a lot of women. Zoe is 19 and she's dealing with student loan debt. And my son is 26. But I remember what it was like when he was in college and going through, dealing with student loans and figuring that out. His daughter actually reviewed that chapter and gave us some really great information on things that are more relevant for today. The next character is Maria, and Maria is a CPA who's branching out, and she's going to start her own CPA practice. Now, she's also engaged and planning her wedding. So for Maria, it was the talking about what you need to think about when you're starting your own business. And also, what do you do when you're planning a wedding? It's when I did the research for the cost of a wedding, I was just blown away with how expensive it is these days to plan just a regular wedding. And so we put together some really useful tips on things you can do to be cost conscious in planning your that Maria is dealing with is, she's getting ready to share her finances with her fiance. And what does that look like? What should she be doing? What are some of the things that she should be talking with her future husband about? So I actually had my son and his fiance read Maria's chapter to give me their thoughts on what we should do. And they had some really great ideas on things that we should do for that chapter. Now, the next character is Val. Now, Val had a very successful career, and then she gave birth to a wonderful child who was diagnosed with autism. And so Val changed her career path so that she had a more flexible schedule and she could stay at home. So she became a social media influencer and blogger about issues related to taking care of special needs children. And so for Val, it was not only planning for her financial future, but it was planning for the financial future of her son, who may need care for the rest of his life. And so, we talk about the decreasing responsibility in families, where at the very beginning of a family, in the early days, you have all kinds of responsibility, but less money. And so as children grow, they start their own lives. And so you have more money in your later years and less responsibility. But for special needs parents, it's different. They have to carry this responsibility throughout their life, and they have to plan for what happens for their child after they pass away. So it's a very special kind of planning. And Sandy Miller and Grace Himmelwright, who deal with special needs families, were very kind to review that chapter for us and gave us some really great insights. Now, after Val, it's Dana. Dana is an employee. She's a hospital director. She's got 2 kids. She's trying to figure out retirement and setting aside money for her kids' college education. What do you do when you've got multiple top priorities and just a limited amount of money? And so we talk a lot in Dana's chapter about employee benefits, what those are, because oftentimes when I'm dealing with clients, they don't know what their employee benefits are. They don't know what it means. They don't know what the employer matches. So we provide a lot of information about employee benefits in Dana's chapter. And then next comes Sarah. Now, Sarah is a real estate agent raising 2 daughters. Sarah left an abusive relationship and had to start from scratch 12 years ago. And she built a very successful real estate business, but, from nothing. And so 1/4 of women are victims of domestic violence. And 99% of those women will also be the victim of financial abuse. So we've got to speak to that, because that's 25% of women out there are in that situation. So it's very important for us to have Sarah's chapter in there to give really good tips on what women in those situations should be looking at, what resources there are for them, and what red flags for women before they get in those situations. So after Sarah comes May. May's in her 50s. She's a university professor. She is not only taking care of her elderly father, but she's also helping her adult son save for the future. So she's got her father and her son living with her, and she's part of the sandwich generation, which a lot of women find themselves in. And women who find themselves in the sandwich generation sacrifice their financial future to take care of their parents and or their children. And so we've got some really great advice for women who find themselves in that situation. And then after May is Hope. Hope's a nurse. She's been married for a very long time and never in a million years thought she'd end up divorced in her 60s. So she's dealing with those issues. What do I do? Divorced, and I'm in my 60s and I don't have a lot of time to make up financial ground. So we talk about that in her chapter, and we also talk about Social Security in her chapter, because she's got to figure out when is the best time for me to claim Social Security. So we have that discussion in Hope's chapter. And then after Hope is Fatima. Fatima was a stay-at-home mom. She took care of her kids, and now she's a widow. And she had nothing to do with the financial decision making. She doesn't know what to do. So we, provide some practical advice for women who find themselves in that situation. And also, Fatima didn't feel connected with their financial professional. So we also provide advice for what she can do if she wants to find a new financial professional. What should she be looking for? What questions should she be asking? And then the very last chapter is Jan. Now, Jan is actually modeled on Tom Matthews' mother, and Jan is 86 years old. And she's the example of what it looks like when you've done everything right. And so we talk about the steps that Jan and her husband took throughout their lives to make sure that they had a good retirement, to make sure that their kids were taken care of, to make sure that Jan would be okay if she ended up on her own. But it's also a chapter that talks about what Jan wants for the future, for her granddaughters and for her great-granddaughters, what she hopes for the future. So it's a very insightful and hopeful chapter, and it's actually one of my favorite chapters. And we actually plan to have Jan come down to Atlanta at a later date, and we're going to do something special for her. We can't have her come to the event in Jacksonville. She has got a brand new great grandson, and so Tom is arranging for her to come to Atlanta to spend time with her great grandson, and we're going to do something special for her then. to really spend time with her and make her feel special about what she's brought to the table and her chapter. And because we need to cover the whole book in Jacksonville, we're not able to do that special thing for her, but we're going to do that in Atlanta when she comes to see her great-grandson.
Well, that's just fabulous. You've used this word hope a number of times, and I love that word. I think we live in a society where many people, and especially women, just feel overwhelmed.
Right.
They may feel like, why do something because I'm just overwhelmed. Address a little bit the importance of just getting started, even if it's just something small step, a small step. Talk a little bit about the importance of getting started.
No matter where you are, at what point you are, and we try and really make this clear for every single character, even Fatima in her 70s, it doesn't matter where you are or how old you are or what you know, just start. And we hope that by providing checklists and guidelines and tips, that we're helping the women readers understand, okay, I can just do one thing at a time, because it is very overwhelming. When you think, oh, my finances and my future and my kids' future and all of this, that we're kind of trying to break it down into bite-sized chunks, so that wherever a woman finds herself, she knows she's got a map, a roadmap to start with.
You mentioned as well the school education, and it's taught a little bit, but not in most schools don't even teach it. And I think those that do, they teach more about how to write a check than how to make sure it goes to the spot. That true?
That's true. That is true. Yes.
And
So, I was just going to say, at the beginning of the book, Sharon Lecter has this wonderful introduction where she talks about the fact that we don't learn about money in school. We basically learn about money from our parents or watching them or the things that they say. And they learn from their parents, you learn from their parents. And so there's not a lot of wisdom about money being passed down in general. And so we want to break that generational cycle of, misinformation and try and help women, because women are the stewards, the educators of the future generations. So we want to use this book as a way to stop that generational track.
yeah, and what if we could teach our youth about some of these basic principles and help them instill a habit at that young age of setting little money aside frequently so that money can grow. Think what would happen with the rule of 72. What would happen in their lives by the time they're in their 50s and 60s and 70s? Money wouldn't be an issue for them. And our country's unique. Kim addressed this a little bit. Our country's unique because of the amount of debt that we carry as individuals. European countries, they don't you treat debt the same way we do. For us, it's just, we all understand how to get into debt. They learn that from a very address the debt challenge in the United States and what we can do about that. And I don't mean with the country. I mean with the individuals, especially women, but any individual. Talk about that for a moment.
Well, we are more of a consumerist society than I think most of the other developed countries out there. And we rely on credit and borrowing probably more than any other country out there. And because of that, the student loan issue is a huge issue, and it's a bigger issue for women because we make less than men. We have less money to pay off our debts. And so women end up paying student loan debt years longer than men do. More women than men end up living paycheck to paycheck. When you live paycheck to paycheck, when you have an emergency, it goes on a credit card, and you end up in this cycle that it's almost impossible to get out of. So debt plays a big role in keeping people in the situation they find themselves in financially. Whereas if they had more information about how the rule of 72 works, the power of compound interest, the time value of money, if they learned about those things and applied more of the 7 money milestones, there is a path to getting out of debt. There's a path to no longer, just your paycheck going to make the minimum payments on whatever it is you owe. If you ask people what financial independence means to them, most people will say, paying off my debts. And we know that that's not financial independence. Just paying off your debts, that is one step, but people can't think beyond. They're so trapped in their debt, they're not able to think beyond what it would be like if I didn't have debt. They can't think beyond that. So that's something that is really important to us, something we really want to accomplish with the original book and with this book for women.
And it's very important, I suppose, that everybody understands that the original book has these basic principles, and it's divided in half. So it's got the concepts, and the second half is the money milestones that puts them into practice. And that this book, How Money Works for Women, Take Control or Lose It, doesn't replace that. It builds on it. Isn't that right?
Right. That's exactly right. We apply the basic concepts and the 7 money milestones to each woman at each stage in her life.
So
at the beginning of each chapter for a woman, we actually identify which milestones are going to be covered.
So you also mentioned, as you were talking the income challenge that women face. They just earn less than men. I think it's very sad, but it's just true. And there's a lot of reasons.
Right.
You and I are blessed to be in an industry, the financial education and financial services industry, where really there's no limit on income that people can. I was at a convention last night where there were a lot of people being recognized making millions of dollars a year by teaching and helping and blessing other families. On the Zoom today, Kim, we have some of the women who joined us today are new in this industry and just learning it. And I recognize a few of the names are people who are considering coming into this industry and becoming financial educators and financial professionals. Can you talk for a moment to the women specifically about this industry and what it can do to their lives, why they may want to consider joining this industry?
So what happened for me, when I left the corporate side, I started my full-time law practice and my part-time financial business. And I looked at the financial business as more of an accommodation for my law clients. But over the years, more people wanted to be part of my organization. They wanted to work with me. And I ended up having a part-time business that was paying me more than my full-time law practice. And I get paid a lot by the hour as an attorney, but it didn't match. It couldn't match what the financial business and the way we're compensated on the financial side could do. And so I actually switched and now do my full-time law practice, my full-time financial business, and my law practice is more part-time. And actually my law practice is more pro bono. I do a lot of pro bono work for single moms, for nonprofit organizations, for domestic violence shelters, on the law side, because the financial business does so many things for me. It helps me feel purpose because I'm helping others and I'm educating others. It takes care of my family from a financial side. I've been able to create the lifestyle that I want. I recently bought a big house. My sister and her 16-year-old daughter live with me. My son and his fiance live in the basement apartment. and I'm getting ready to move my mother in September. She didn't want to move in Georgia in the heat of the summer, so we're going to do that in September. But for me, the lifestyle I want is being surrounded by family and having family dinners. And, last night, the family all watched a movie together, and we brought Chinese in, and we all ate Chinese together and watched a movie together and ate popcorn. That's the lifestyle that I want. That might not be the lifestyle you want. Some women just want to travel the world. They want to pick up and go wherever they want, or live part-time here and live part-time there. Some women may want to do a lot more volunteer work than they're able to do, or mission work. Whatever lifestyle you want to create for yourself, this business can give you that ability from the financial side and from the compensation side. And that is a blessing. That's a blessing to me. It's not anything I ever would have accomplished on the corporate side. I was compensated well, but I had no control over my time.
So I'm actually making that same transition. I've been doing the part-time financial services practice for about 10 years, almost 10 years now, and the law full-time longer than that. But I went to law school later in life. I was 42 years old when I became an attorney, and I had done the financial.
Never too late, and you're never too old.
Never too late. No, they called me grandpa in law school. In fact, my sixth child, who I think is on with us, Jillian, I was born during my first year of law school. It's kind of fun.
Wow.
And as I make this wonderful transition, not only is the financial side, paying better and giving me more flexibility, which I love. My wife and I love to travel as well. In fact, we're considering spending 3 weeks working from France if I can figure out the time zone challenge, right? But here's what I've also found, and don't misunderstand. I think as attorneys, we do a lot of good and we can bless a lot of lives, especially in the practices you and I do. But there's so much more good that we can do when we're teaching people these concepts and then helping them apply it in their lives. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, we are changing people's lives. And, this is a business where we get our families involved. So my son and his fiance are, life insurance licensed, and where I was doing training with them yesterday, they want to be in this business. We see Tom Matthews doing that with his children, all throughout our company. You see parents working with their children in this business. You don't see that on the corporate side. You may see that in a law firm, but not with the level of frequency that you see in our business.
Yes. In fact, in my family, it's the same thing. My children are working with me. Some of their, at least one of their spouses, Chris, is working with me. And I've got a grandson I'm starting to train a little bit now, and I think it's going to change. I think it'll change his life, his perspective on money. It's one thing to have a parent or grandparent sit down and say, you need to save some money. You need to be more careful about your debt. And it's another thing to have them learn as they enter an industry that could shape their future. And I'm excited about that.
Right. That's absolutely right.
All right, we've only got a couple more minutes. If there's any pressing questions that any of y'all have, you can put it in the chat, and I'll try to keep an eye on that as well. I kind of wanted to end with this question before I see any other questions in the chat. But this question, Kim, is: tell me what you see for the future, the future for women, and how money is going to impact. How money works, and what we've done in our team, and what you're doing with this wonderful book, and what I'm doing, spreading it out, how it's going to impact what you see the future.
So I firmly believe that with this book and with the women leaders we have and the example that we set, that we are going to change the financial services industry for women in this country and beyond. I firmly believe that we are going to empower more women. We're going to see more women participating in the discussion, and we're going to see such growth in the financial services industry of more women financial professionals. So that what we saw happen in the real estate industry between the 80s and 90s, we're going to see that in the financial services industry, where it's dominated by men. And within the next 5 to 10 years, I see that transition to the industry being dominated by women. And we're the leaders, we are the pioneers in that transition. We are the ones helping, pushing, pulling sometimes to have that happen. I'm actually preparing this weekend for an article for the Wall Street Journal about what it is we are accomplishing with this book. And so I firmly believe with Tom's vision and these great examples of women leaders like Sandy Miller and Hannah Hornstein and Rose Macias, and the list goes on and on and on and on. And with the co-author, Sharon Lechter, and her credibility and power in this industry, that our voice is going to ring louder than the other voices out there on women and finance.
We had a wonderful question actually come in. What other books or other things should a young woman be reading that would bless their lives and help them become better with money?
Well, I definitely think that women, we always want to be continuously learning. And for those of you who have not read Sharon's books that she wrote for the Napoleon Hill Foundation, like Think and Grow Rich for Women, Outwitting the Devil, 3 Feet from Gold, I think you really need to take a look at those. There are great men and women authors out there. So, I highly recommend you just keep reading and, ask each other, what are you reading now? What book is speaking to you now? I'm always either reading a book or listening to an Audible book. There are, you can look at the New York Times list or all kinds of lists out there, Oprah Winfrey's list of, great books out there to read, and ask your leader, ask your friends, but keep learning, keep reading. But Sharon Lechter's books, hands down, are amazing.
Yeah, in fact, I have had a habit for years, and it's really blessed my life that every morning as I'm getting ready, I've got something that I'm watching or playing on YouTube or listening to that's uplifting, that's educational, that's making my life, that's helping me become a better person. I recommend it to all of you. Final question, Kim, and again, I'm just so grateful you'd take time on a Saturday for our smaller group when you're usually in front of thousands. You've really blessed my life today. And I think I can speak on those that are here on their behalf, that you've been a great blessing to us today. Final question was in the chat. If you could say one thing to all women to bless their lives, what would you say?
Wow. One thing. Wow. I would say, there's a Martin Luther King quote that I love. And I can't remember it word for word, but essentially it is about, to be filled with hope, hope must be present. And so to communicate hope in your life and hope to others you love and around you, financial future, to communicate that hope, it's got to be present in your life. And so, be inspired by this book, by something else, by someone else, but have that hope firmly rooted in your life, and then express that and communicate that to others. Be the hope that's in the room for somebody else. So many women are hopeless. when it comes to finances, but be the hope for them.
Thank you. That was actually a wonderful ending. Thank you, everyone, for joining. We recorded this, so get a hold of me if you'd like to get this recording and get it out to some of your friends friends and family that ought to listen to it. If you'd like to get copies of the book, How Money Works, Stop Being a Sucker, let me know. This one, the moment it's off the press here in a couple of weeks, let me know. We'll make sure that we get a copy of that to you, as well as a benefit for joining us today. Each of you have a blessed weekend. Kim, again, thank you.
Thank you all so much. This has been wonderful.
Recording stopped.
All right. Thank you, David, for recording it. Thank you again, everyone, for joining. What a great, Kim. I hope we can do this again someday. It was just fabulous.
I do too. This was great, Mark. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. Bye-bye, Kim.
Bye.